Hi, welcome to TeachStar. In today's video we're going to be looking at sharing groups and what are the positives and what are the downsides of sharing a teaching group. So what I mean by sharing groups is that for a subject they traditionally have one teacher, sometimes because of timetables or because someone is on a part-time timetable, or there's a clash, or for one of 100 reasons the group has to be shared. So between you and the person you're sharing with, or the people you're sharing with, you effectively become one teacher, but split into two or three or four. I've even had four before, but anyway. What's the advantages of this? The advantages are kind of limited, but the students will have different points of view. If they don't particularly like one teacher, it's not going to ruin their qualification. They've always got the other teachers or other teacher. Students generally, can get on with teachers better than others, even if they don't particularly hate them. And so, there's that. And actually, it's really good if you've got an experienced teacher and a not so experienced teacher, to be working together in that way. It can be really positive to kind of to support them. But if you have two teachers equally as good, you can share a lot more directly, and you've got an ally. If there's a group who aren't particularly doing well, you've got someone to go to for support, or someone to kind of work with. And they might be having the same issues. And as teachers, we've talked about confidence before, and attributing failures externally where you can. It can be kind of a source of comfort that the other teacher's not doing very well with that group either. So there's some positives for it. Generally, why it's not done is that as teachers, our job is to understand the group. And how can you understand the group if you're only seeing them half the time or a third of the time or whatever the split is? It's very, very difficult, and I don't particularly like it as a teacher. When I have a group, I want that group. And I don't particularly want to share them, apart from with A-level, where I think A-level, it's so important that you have different perspectives for. I'm talking mainly about Key Stage 3, GCSE, kind of in the lower years, so 11 to 16-year-olds, rather than kind of 16 to 18-year-olds, where I think that you can share teachers there. Because when they go to university, they'll have a whole load of lecturers and stuff. I say when, for those who go to university, they'll have a whole load of lecturers. So it's not such an issue then. So what are the downsides as well as the fact that I just don't like it, and that you're not getting to know them as well. One of the downsides is that they'll always identify the stronger teacher and the weaker teacher of the pairing, and that does cause problems. I think that if you do have a weaker teacher, and so a lot of times this is a perception, but sometimes it's a reality that a teacher is struggling, it's very easy for them to say, well, hang on, I learn in these lessons and I don't learn in these lessons, and these lessons are run by one teacher and these lessons are run by the other. And I hear those comparisons quite a lot, unfortunately, and that can cause problems, because it can make students a lot more vocal and a lot more kind of upfront about the issues that maybe are happening in that class, and the teacher's trying to address. And obviously, in my role before is to support that teacher in addressing those issues, but it's counterproductive to kind of have that at the forefront, and a constant reminder about how much further back that lesson is than the other lessons. So that's not helpful. It's also a logistical issue, because you're effectively one teacher between the sharing. One teacher is going to be teaching one thing, but the second teacher will need to know what the first teacher's taught. So you need constant communication between both parties. And I'm going to tell you now, there has never been the level of communication between those two parties that there needs to be. And the way I deal with it when I've run departments and run faculties before is we do a plan at the start of each half term. What is each teacher teaching specifically? we don't do that thing where one teacher teaches the first lesson, then the next teacher teaches the second lesson, third lesson, fourth lesson, because that just is a road to disaster. Because what happens is that the first teacher teaches the first lesson and they're a bit behind, they didn't really understand that. So the second teacher comes in with the lesson plan, having not found out that they didn't understand the first lesson, and the second lesson builds on the first lesson, and they don't have a clue about it because that teacher, the first teacher, didn't have time to tell them, or whatever, or there was 2 lessons in a day, or whatever it is. So avoid that. Have 2 completely separate topics. Most subjects, they're not just doing one thing for the whole half term. To separate the topics, give one topic to one teacher, one topic to another, and then they've got their own little world to live in, and they're not so dependent on knowing what the other teacher's currently doing and what they're struggling with. I would recommend to have weekly meetings, even if it's just 5 minutes with your teachers. And if you're a subject or faculty leader, maybe some time in the meetings that you have, which I know is not very frequent in a lot of schools, but set aside 10 minutes for teachers to talk about classes that they share. And if you're a subject leader or a faculty leader, make sure you know who's sharing. Make sure you've got a list of people who are sharing with others. There's so many times where I've needed that list, and I'm so happy that it's just there, and I can work out who. So someone comes up to me and goes, who shares this group with me, and I can just find it out straight away. So always make sure you have that list. I think it is difficult. I don't think any school plans to split groups. I think it's one of these things that's a necessary evil of having a timetable and not just being able to do timetables up until 9 o'clock at night, or having 10-minute lessons and then you could timetable it perfectly. It's just one of the necessary evils. But I think that with good communication with the person you're sharing with, and good support and good kind of understanding. I mean, one of the things I don't like, I've heard before early on in my career, is like a teacher bragging about how much better they are for them in front of the teacher they share with. I think that you need to be very conscious that people have emotions, and actually that's not very productive to kind of say, which I'm sure if you're watching this video you wouldn't do that, but it can be a very difficult situation, and it's something that people don't talk about, weirdly. Like in my training, in any of the training I've attended, it's never really been addressed, but it does have, it's worth some thought, that's all I'll say. If you share a group with someone and there's something different, some other positive or some other negative you found, please write them in the comments below. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you want to see more from us, please click subscribe. We release videos every single weekday at 5 o'clock in the evening. Thank you.